Okay,
Mhm.
another weekly wrap up. Our second start, full start. Andres, thanks for joining me.
Not a problem. Happy here as usual.
Okay, so let's jump in. Our featured story this week was Storyblok's expansion. Where are they expanding to?
So they're expanding to the APAC region, Asia Pacific, and as part of that expansion, they've hired Marcus Patterson as their APAC sales manager, and right now
Yeah,
he's in Thailand, and he's just going to be supporting all their customers throughout the region.
yeah, and they announced a few of the customers that they already have in that region. They've mentioned in their sort of press release and landing page that they've published about this.
Yeah,
They've highlighted China, Singapore, and Australia, just as they mentioned those three specifically. So I think that tells you something. And of course, people can look into the companies that they already have sort of signed up with them and see where they're sort of based, where they're operating, and you can get a good idea of the actual regions that Storyblok having success in. But one thing that caught my eye with this was two things that actually caught my eye. Firstly, the way they expanded, right? So we've seen a couple of CMS vendors expand in the last 12 months or so into new regions, and they did so by opening new offices, right? We've seen that a couple of times. Storyblok, I've been interacting with Storyblok since they were just launched. I can't remember the year, so I won't say the year, but I remember talking with Dominic, a meeting with Dominic very, very early on. And they were always remote first, right? They started off as, a very small remote team. And as they've grown, and they've grown tremendously, of course, raising many, many millions, 58 million in total so far, they've remained remote first. And this announcement is sort of like a very remote first company expansion, right? They haven't opened a new office. They've just, as you said, they've hired a new head of sales in Thailand to focus on that region, and he's based there, and that's it. They've got some clients already in that space or in that region, should I say? And yeah, that's an expansion, and that's not to minimize it or anything like that. It's just super interesting how remote first and remote work has impacted even this kind of thing where you can just expand to places and don't necessarily have to open a physical office anywhere. It's more of a sort of culture mindset type thing. Interesting, isn't it?
yeah, exactly. And I think that goes like even when we think about some of the things you use your CMS for, like localization and things like that. Like it's all about that kind of those little cultural nuances and geographic understandings of the area. That's all you really need.
Yes,
Like,
that's a good
yeah,
point. I agree.
what sales team and other support roles. So like, yeah, once if you're a remote team doing that, then yeah, you can basically say we're expanding into the region.
Yeah, it's a really interesting sort of shift where it's like it's not a physical expansion. It doesn't have to be, or it's a physical in the sense that we've got an employee in that space in that region, but it's not. We don't have an office there, and that's fine. And by today's standards, is absolutely fine. There's no real need for it, I guess. The other interesting thing about this announcement was Storyblok also published a survey, a small study they did on APAC companies about their sort of relationship with their existing CMSs, their pain points, that kind of thing. Only 13% of APAC companies are happy with their monolithic CMSs, which is probably more of a global thing rather than just an APAC thing, but that's interesting to see. 46% are considering moving to headless CMS. Security, website speed, and ease of use for all content creators is very important for them. 61% are worried about security. 67% use two or more CMSs, which is a really interesting one because we don't talk much about that, how most companies are operating multiple CMSs at once and the complications that can bring. And 68% deliver content in more than one language, as you just mentioned, like localization, personalization, translation. All these things are, a growing issue for global companies. So yeah, the study is super interesting. Those stats are super interesting. But yeah, I think it was obviously a good moment for Storyblok. So congratulations to them.
Yeah, definitely. And I think those stats they mentioned, they just kind of reinforce what I mean, these are specific to the APAC region, but I can see a lot of trends that we see in like other regions as well, like monolithic CMS being a problem, security issues, managing multiple CMSs. So yeah, it's the same across the globe.
I agree. Okay, moving on to the second, our second story of three we're going to discuss today. Bloomreach announces Q3 product launches, revolutionizing personalized e-commerce with advanced features for marketing, product discovery, and content. So I was a little bit confused about this initially. So these 15 new products, have they launched? Do you know if they've launched or like they're launching? Because we're kind of at the end of Q, or coming up to the end of Q3. So
yeah, so we're because right now we're in Q4, and what it is like it's confusing me too. But what it is, they didn't actually launch new products; they just added different product features. So
right.
I think that was one of the, like, if you look at the title versus like what's the actual content of the thing, that was one of the things that was a little confusing for me too. But yeah, I think they just recently added a whole bunch of new features across their, like, they basically, Bloomreach has 3 pillars: engagement, discovery, content. And they launch features across all these pillars. So some of their engagement features, like more contextual personalization for banners and pop-ups, custom campaign dashboards, real-time page personalization, a lot of personalization features related to like how they want to engage with customers. The discovery features new search options like multi-language semantic search, catalog management, pixel monitoring, and then content features like external previews, more enhanced content management APIs, reference SPAs for Next.js. Yeah, so it's really just a bunch of new features that they added.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a lot of focus on personalization here. So contextual personalization in banners and pop-ups has been added, personalized marketing with Salesforce Commerce Cloud, real-time page personalization. One interesting one is plug and play library, which they say allows marketers to reduce the time spent completing time-consuming tasks, such as creating workflows, connecting channels, and automating triggers. With a library of the highest performing campaigns, automations, and templates, marketers can work even more efficiently, putting save time into building larger campaigns. So that's interesting. I'll be interested to see how that works, and if like each company has to build their own library of these sort of templates or workflows, or if like they're being, given out of the box type of thing. That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
That's one that caught my eye. But yeah, interesting time for Bloomreach. Lots of new features and said sort of product launches, but they're more like feature launches. But fair play. These all seem extremely relevant, extremely needed. So fair play to them. Let's move on to our third and final story. Did you get a chance to read this story? Are you looking for a new DXP? Here's what you should look for.
Yeah, I read through it, and it was a little weird. Like, I don't think it fully really addressed what you should look for. It just kind of talked about what other people might be looking for.
I agree. I think you're being very kind, and I think that's fine. For me, you have to get down. You've got to scroll down to sort of how to implement a new DXP to get any sort of guidance on what you should look for in a DXP. And there's two things I don't like about this article, which is unfortunate because there's a sort of large companies clearly sponsoring this, and I think they could have done a better job here. But they're talking about experts advise. Experts advise. They've mentioned experts advise a couple of times, and they haven't mentioned who those experts are. And firstly, a company of this size should be saying, we advise, our experts advise, because why not? So this is kind of a weird way for them to introduce advice. But anyway, so I'll read out some of this advice. Experts advise that organizations with a new DXP follow certain steps to make sure that they are getting most out of the platform. First of all, they should be able to clearly define their business requirements and overall goals for the platform. On the face of it, that's a good point, but it's extremely surface level. It's very vague. That's not going to really help anybody to make a decision on the DXP, quite frankly. The next one is experts advise that organizations with a new DXP. Oh, I think this is repeating itself. Yeah, there's actually repeats. Okay.
Yeah, there's also companies test, train, and select a platform based on employee feedback.
There you go.
Different teams need to access different tools, and the platform that works for one team may lack the proper functions for another. Yeah.
Yeah, again, that is pretty good advice, to be fair. Employee feedback is important, but again, if that's the two pieces of advice on how to choose a DXP, I think that's extremely surface level. And yeah, I was expecting something a bit better than this, to be honest. But any other comments on that? And in fact, let's actually try to give one or two points here to help this article, like if we can.
Yeah, and I think it's in it. So like I have to like go a bit deeper to kind of figure it out. And it's basically because it's an ACL sponsored article. Like they're well known in the DXP space. Like I think they were like challengers in Gartner's most recent DXP quadrant. So they're like regularly featured and things like that. But this article is very strangely done because it's kind of like an excerpt from their, like they have another white paper type thing, a future proof guide to digital transformation trends. And it's basically supposed to be like an excerpt from that. But when you look at the title versus what's the content of the article, it can be very, very confusing for the reader. It's not talking about anymore, not talking about DSP. It's just kind of like, I don't know, like it's yeah, there's a lot of confusion going on there.
Yeah, it's a bit chaotic. Okay, so I'll try to give it like at least one point here of like, so the title was, of course, are you looking for a new DXP? Here's what you should look for. Yeah. I would say that if I can give like one piece of advice off the top of my head, I would say figure out what legacy systems you have currently and that your employees actually enjoy using and don't want to lose, and then figure out from that point what your DXP should look like from that point on, right? Because the DXP should be an arrangement of products, microservices that can communicate with each other. So if there's some deal breakers on, if you don't want to lose Salesforce, or you don't want to lose, whatever it may be, product X, you don't want to lose that, then fine, you have to start with that and then figure out, okay, which headless CMS would work best with this platform, which email marketing system works best, which personalization engine would work best, and work from there. That's probably for a large enterprise company, established company, that's probably the best advice I can give just off the top of my head. Then after that, you can start figuring out, after you've shortlisted what would work best, or what already has plugins or integrations, for example, or which products have agencies that have experience with headless CMSs and different sort of DXP implementations, as well as your legacy system. That's a good way to feel your way around and make a shortlist, and then you can start to delve into deeper stuff. That's probably my best advice I can give off the top of my head. Yeah. Any advice from you? I'm putting you on the spot. I appreciate that, but I think you can beat these guys. I think you can beat these guys on top of like what they've said. But if you can't, then that's fine. Put you on the spot.
I think this goes back. Like, I think the main problem here is the article doesn't really know what it wants to say. Exactly. Yeah. Because if you're going from talking about digital transformation, which is what the original kind of white paper is, digital transformation trends, you can't just take those things like, okay, this is what you look for. It's not there. It needs. I think the structure is really what's the main thing that has to be completely rethought. Yeah. And that stems from the title and what you want the reader to get out of this. I don't think I think that's the main problem they have. They don't know what they want the reader to get out of this. They just kind of wanted to share this content, and they didn't really do a good job.
Yeah, and also just one thing I've realized just now, as I've said, it could also mean choosing a DXP with a traditional headless or hybrid CMS option. And again, they haven't really nailed down what a DXP is, because if we're talking about sort of a modern DXP, you don't choose it off the shelf, right? Like a legacy system, you don't just choose that. You're building it. It's a best of breed system that can be swapped. Different things can be swapped in and out. So there's a few big gaping holes here, but yeah, such is life. I think that covers what we wanted to cover this week. Andres, thanks for your time, and we'll catch up again next week.
Sounds good, Kyle. Next week.
Thank you. See ya.